So defence. So you can see the two dogs here, both of them are a defensive reaction. Defence, by its very nature, and we'll go into more as we go through this, is the dog basically feeling that it's threatened and it's going to defend itself by the use of aggression or running away. The dog on the right, you can see that it's cowering away. This is more what we would determine an avoidance behaviour, but avoidance of moving away is still a defensive reaction. Fight or flight, we've all heard the term of fight or flight. That is all under defence. They feel threatened and they're going to move away to either be aggressive, as you can see with the dog on the left. He's certainly saying not happy about this. And the dog on the right, which is just cowering and going into avoidance. But all of these are defensive. Now, we'll go into it, but this is another part with the greyhound for me that is very common now. We get a lot of dogs at class that are having defensive reactions towards other dogs and people based on the fact that they're perceiving they're under threat. So when we talk about defence, in real terms, it's defence of life or food or resources that the dog is going to defend to make you go away. The whole idea of defensive behaviours and aggression primarily is to say to you, move off, to go into avoidance yourself, to get you to move away, or the object of whatever it's doing. If it's another dog, the same thing. It's showing aggression to go, don't come near me, I'm big and bad and tough, leave me alone, and moving the other dog away. It's trying to create avoidance in the other object that is creating the idea that it's under threat. So what we've written there is triggered by perception of threat. This is something that people have used the term with defence for a long time of fear aggression. Oh, that's fear aggression in a dog. That's not really 100% correct. It doesn't mean that the dog is truly fearful for its life. It just means that the dog perceives it's under threat. It may believe it can win the fight and engage and basically take care of the threat, but it still perceives it's under threat. So it's not a true fear behaviour. When we think of fear, we more think of the dog on the right here that's cowering and going, oh man, that's not necessarily what defence is. The dog can be very forthcoming and very powerful in the aggression that it shows you and willing to engage and bite, but it's still perceiving that it's under threat. The perception of threat is what triggers the behaviour. With no threat, there is no need to be aggressive. Okay, if the dog isn't perceiving that it's under threat, it has no reason to show aggression. Otherwise, it would be aggressive 24/7. There's a trigger to the behaviour to gain that aggression, and it's perception of threat. And the reason I use the term perception of threat as opposed to fear is, like I said, it's more to do with the perception we have that we think fear is, oh no, you know, bad, and we're really, really scared. In real terms, if a 10-year-old kid comes up to me and starts swinging punches, I can still perceive him under threat. I can feel I can take care of that threat, I can handle what's occurring, but I still perceive I'm under threat. And that's the same with the dog. And the other thing is that when we're talking of perception of threat, it doesn't matter whether it's real or not. It only matters what the dog perceives. So the example that I give to this more often than not is if you're scared of spiders, and my wife's petrified of spiders to the point that she's tried to jump out of a moving vehicle when there was a spider on the outside of the windscreen. Now, to me, this is illogical, that you go, what are you doing? Like, this is insane. But to her, the fear is real. Like, I think of a spider and just go, well, just kill it. Like, it's just small insect object, it's nothing. But to her, the perception and the idea of it is absolutely real. And it's the same with dogs. It doesn't matter that we look at it and go, what are you scared about? The reality is the dog is scared. And by that, it's going to react aggressively. The best dog person that I've ever met was a guy called Dr. Stuart Hilliard. He works at Lakeland Air Force Base in the US, or Lakeland Air Force Base. And he talks about that if you're around your dog long enough, sooner or later it lets you down. What he means is sooner or later it sees an object that it makes it very scared of. Okay, and he told the story of that he had a police dog that had done a whole series of different work. And then one day he's walking down the street and a Mr. Whippy van pulled up and it's doing the whole ding-a-ling-a-ling, you know, sort of thing. Well, the dog's backed up to the fence and was bowed up like this dog here, growling and barking and hair up on its back and the tail between its legs because for whatever reason it perceived it's under threat. Now, it's done work at levels that most dogs would balk and run, but that object created the perception of threat. So the dog's gone into very defensive behaviours based on that. It's tried to move away and get into avoidance. And if the wall wasn't there, it would have kept going. It just went, I don't like that. And that's the nature of it, that it doesn't matter what we think. We're looking at something going, you're scared of the umbrella. It doesn't matter what we think. It only matters what it thinks. And in this case, it's the perception that triggers the behaviour. The whole reason for defensive aggression is that they perceive they're under threat. Now that can be that you're going to take their bone, you're going to come near their bed and they don't like that. A pretty common one in greyhounds. I would get a call about a dog that's growling over its bed at least once a week in a greyhound because of the fact that it perceives as under threat. Resource guarding is very much a defensive behaviour. For a long time, a dog that would growl over a bone or food or whatever, we'd go, oh, it's dominating and all the rest of it. I'll go into dominance later and why that's not the case. But in this situation, it is what we call resource guarding. It's just saying, this is a precious resource to me, you're a threat to it, so I'll be aggressive to make you go away. I will growl at you to make you move off. Okay? That's the whole reason it exists. If there was no perception of threat, there is no aggression. Quite often it doesn't take a lot to shift a greyhound away from that idea. Thankfully, they're normally very handless, soft, and they're easy to be manipulated to go, don't do that. There's no success in it for you. But they will very much go into defence, just like every other dog. They will go into avoidance pretty quick too and go, you know what, I can outrun most things and I'm off. So we do have that luxury as well. But a lot of time, of course, they're on lead and that's taken away. Why a good dog will be more aggressive on a lead than off a lead, generally speaking, is because they can't move away. Their fight mechanism has been taken away. They may want to move off, but they can't. Okay? So at the end of the day, when we talk about fight or flight, if there's no flight, there's fight, and that's it. Okay? So highly emotional. So when we spoke about predation, we were talking there about the fact that it's a cold kill. The dog just moves in, does it, and moves on. Defence is the complete opposite. It's a highly emotive behaviour. The dog is under high degrees of stress when it is doing this. It feels, once again, that it's threatened and it is highly emotive. And what that means is that the dog, once it goes up, it can take a long time to calm down. In predation, it can have success and 2 minutes later it's asleep. In defence, generally speaking, it will wind into it and build up into it, and it can take a very long time for the dog to calm after it's gone into that because it's a highly emotive response. It's no different to us. If you feel like you've been in a fight, been in a street fight, if you like, you don't calm down straight away. Well, most of us don't. There are certainly people in society that do, but the vast majority of us, and myself very much one of those, that we don't want to fight. We're not really keen on having that fight, and we fight if we have to, but then it'll take a long time, and you know, people go through PTSD and all these things to go past that. The dog can be very much the same. When they wind up into defence, it can take them a long time to calm because of the fact it's a highly emotive behaviour. So fight or flight, we've all heard the term, we've touched on it quite briefly and we probably won't do too much more on it. It's pretty simple. The dog, when it feels threatened, has two options. It can run away from that or it can stand and fight. The dog, when we're talking about defence and showing the aggression like the dog is on the left here, that is very much a fight mechanism. The dog has triggered into that and gone, I will show aggression to make you go away. Now that dog, he is actually very stressed at this point in time. Okay, he's just about ready to break and run away from that threat. You can see by the short mouth, what we talk about short mouth is that the dog goes there and brings out the front teeth, that it's not showing a long mouth, it's under stress. Now it's coming forward and going to be aggressive clearly, but it is under huge amounts of stress at that point in time and it's right on the edge of too much threat and it's going to run away and go and hide. The dog obviously on the right there, he's clearly under a high degree of stress and very, very threatened and feeling very uncomfortable about it. That is right on the edge of where he's going to run away if he's given the chance. Like he's using all his nerve development and all his brain process to move in to go and sniff that person's hand and to try and interact and say hello. Being a pack animal, dogs will more often than not try to seek contact with you. But he's right on the edge of either giving the hand a bite or running away. If the person who's putting his hand down suddenly stood up or slipped on the bit of gravel or whatever, you'll find the dog will take off. Okay, so it's very much under stress at that point in time that the flight mechanism is right there, ready to go. And every dog has it, as we do, that you will undergo a certain amount of stress and then go, I don't want to be a part of that anymore, I want to get away. That's very much what the dog is doing in this situation, is that it will come out and fight or it will run away. Now, like I said, greyhounds quite often will choose to run if given a choice because they know they have speed on their side. However, once again, on lead, that's taken away from them. And also even when they're on their beds or when they're confined in a house or whatever. I had one recently where the greyhound bit the mother-in-law, and that was because, once again, they took the dog outside to meet and they said hello, and then it walked inside and bang, and it took the bite straight away because it felt confined within the space. Okay, so it couldn't move away anymore, so it's gone into a flight mechanism or a fight mechanism as opposed to a flight. So it will do it. And when we're going through this, and we'll go through how to rectify it, you must take it very, very slowly, because if you try to rush it, you'll end up with a bite, and then, you know, who's housing a dog with a bite history? Very quick to build through success, and I've written there, one of the fastest of any behaviours. Anyone who has worked with aggressive animals and with aggressive dogs will tell you that any degree of success in the dog being aggressive. So if you go down to pat it and the dog growls at you and you go, oh, and back away, the dog has gone, that was successful. In the end, defence is a stress-relieving behaviour. The dog's perceiving it's under stress. It is aggressive to reduce the stress. The fact that you balked and moved your hand back, the dog went, good result. Now, the next time you put your hand close to the dog, if there's no change in that, you'll probably find it'll fire right at you. It'll actually leap out towards you. It might not bite you, but it has a snap. And then the next time you go to do it again, it could take a bite. It might be a frontal bite with the front teeth as opposed to the back teeth, but it might take a bite. And then again, the next time, it'll take a full bite. And in 4 goes, it's gone from where it's growling at you to where it's biting you, because it's had 4 repetitions of success. When we're training dogs for police and military, we trigger the dog into defence at different times. And you will see a dog that might be standing over there against the curtain over there, and it might go, and then I'll back off. Within 30 seconds, most of the time, it's at the end of the lead going, rah, 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 and carrying on at me because it's had success. Nothing is reinforced quicker than defensive aggression, because the dog's under stress and it's wanting to make that go away. This is a massively important thing to the dog, and it has success with it. Well, straight away it learns that was a great result, and to do it. And it's why we get so many stories in dogs of, my dog just snapped and bit me, or the dog had never done that before. It just hadn't gone to the levels that the people had recognised. And they, you know, they might not have had the dog obviously, but it's growled at someone and no one did anything about it. And in their mind, they've looked at, oh, well, the dog's done it for this or that. But they haven't actually rectified the issue that was created from the growling. And the dog has had success. Once again, it doesn't matter what we think of success. It only matters what the dog thinks is success. And the dog has gone, this is a great result. This worked very, very well. And it will basically be what we call successfully approximated very quickly. The dog will leap up very, very quick, especially if it's had a couple of repetitions of success. Then someone tries to push it a little bit harder, the dog will escalate straight away. It will come out a lot more with aggression, and it will come forward. And it's like I said, it's why people go, my dog wasn't aggressive and then it was, is because it's taken very few repetitions for the dog to have success with that. Okay? And the more success it has, the stronger it becomes in it. It realises there's power in its aggression. It realises that it can control other objects' behaviour through its aggression. So it very quickly goes from growling to barking to biting, boom, 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 because of the fact that it realises it can control what occurs. And like I said, it doesn't take very many of those to happen. And most people, if a dog growls and has a snap at them, they back off. And the dog straight away goes, what a good result that was. I just got taught this was a great thing to do, because it's, once again, it's self-reinforced. No one had to add a reinforcement and say, good dog for doing that. The dog got reinforcement by doing it. It did it, the person backed off, the dog moved away, they backed off the bone, they moved away from the bed, success. And it takes very, very few of those for it to escalate. And this is, like I said, the biggest behavioural problem that I face right now. So we talk about it being a reactive behaviour, that it's very much based on the stimuli that is presented. The dog reacts to the stimuli. If there's no, once again, pressure on the dog doesn't show a defensive reaction. It's very much a reactive object that occurs here, that the dog goes, someone's come, they've put too much pressure on me, I will be aggressive to make it go away. They're reacting to what is presented in front of them. So it's very much a reactive behaviour defence. It's not an active behaviour as is predatory, where the dog sees a rabbit sitting over there. The rabbit doesn't have to do much. It's just sitting there and the dog's off, because of the fact that it's aroused by that. It's actively participating. It's actively challenging it. In this case, the dog is reacting to the stimuli that is presented in front of it. So if there's no threat, there is no aggression, whereas the rabbit doesn't have to do anything. It's just sitting there minding its own business and the dog's on it. This is something that is occurring the other way around. So it is progressive. So what I mean by that is exactly what I spoke about before. The dog goes from growling to barking to biting as we go. But Basically what we do when we're talking about fixing this is if we can fix it at the low level, we don't get to the high level. So the way that I picture aggression, defensive aggression, is like a sliding scale, that the dog has to go through these things, and it starts with posturing and then moving to growling, barking, and then up to biting. Now, it can move through those extraordinarily quickly. It can go through from 0 to 100 real fast, but it goes through these processes that you'll see a dog, as you can see with the posturing here in these dogs, the dog will posture as its first result. It might stack itself up and show itself to be bigger. It might drop down, or both are a defensive reaction. A lot of the time when you get a bite in a dog, it's actually dropped down and it's looking out the top of its eyes. Sorry, I've got to stay on the mic, so it makes it a little bit difficult, but it will drop down and look up at you here, and that's the sign that it's really going to come in for a bite. Now, the posturing is where it starts. If we stop the dog at the posturing, we don't get to the bite. There's been a theory for around, and I'll discuss this if people want to, about don't punish the growl, that if the dog growls and you punish it, that it will just move straight from there to biting. Now, that's certainly possible. It is certainly true that that can happen, but more often than not, when we work with defensive dogs, stop them showing the original behaviour and then desensitise them, as I'll go into, and straight away you'll shift away from it. You won't get that progression to do it. But for me, if you get the dog to have a go at you and react and nothing bad happens to the dog and anything good happens, it's reinforced straight away. And that's the problem, like I'm saying, is because of how fast it's reinforced, how fast it's repeated. If you don't teach the dog this is a poor result for you, it's got success and it will do it really, really quickly, and it will go from the point of being that it might just posture to biting very quick. So basically it just increases there as the dog feels more threatened. So the more the threat comes, the more the aggression will build. So if the dog growls at me here and I move in towards it, it'll go up to barking, growling, etc., and lunging forward or whatever, until the point where it goes, I don't want anything to do with that, and it'll try and run away. It'll go into avoidance and move backwards. But it will very quickly, like I was saying, go up and escalate into it as the threat increases. The dog on the left, like I was saying, he's under a huge amount of stress here. He's coming forward, but he's right on the verge of breaking. Now, that is a dog that's actually been stimulated by someone moving into it and showing that aggression. We filmed it so we could see the dog and his reaction to people when they came close. But he's right on the point of moving away. But the more we increase or decrease the distance to him, the more aggression he will show. At some point, like I said, that dog will move away. Other dogs won't. They'll just engage and bite you because there might be a stronger temperamented dog, or they've had more success in their defensive aggression, so they're more comfortable in it and they're more happy to bite. Okay? The dog has to have, whilst it perceives under threat, has to have a reasonable degree of strength in its temperament to actually come forward and bite you. Most of the time, the dog will move away, and it's why we probably get far fewer bites than what we may otherwise, is because most dogs will choose not to bite if given the choice. They'll try to get out of it. They're trying to make you go away by barking, growling, lunging at you. They're really trying to get you to move off. And if you do, then like I said, they've got success and there's a whole series of other problems. But they will try and basically drive you away. And so if you then increase it, they'll go to a point and then they'll run. All right, so solutions for this issue of defensive aggression are many and varied. And it will very much depend on the dog that is presented in front of you. You can go through everything from mild desensitisation, which I'll touch on in a moment, right through to drug therapies. Okay, fluoxetine is becoming a drug that is used. Fluoxetine's Prozac, and it's used now massively in dogs. I would have, I don't know, 30 customers at any one time that have got their dog now on Prozac, on fluoxetine. Now, it has some very positive effects. It can have some negative effects. People like to portray it that the drug will do this or that. Not always the case. A lot of dogs regress on this sort of thing. There's a huge influence on why the dog perceives under threat, so that varies to whether the drug is effective. But you'll get, like I said, a huge variance on the techniques used to do it. But for me, when I get a dog that once again is showing a defensive reaction, I will teach it that the stress increases, not decreases, by doing aggression. That when it shows aggression to something, that there will be stress from me or from something else that will make the situation worse. The reason I do that is I want to cap the behaviour real quickly. The longer the dog stays aggressive and lunging out at someone, the more danger it is. If you teach them quickly that there's something unpleasant by doing that, they quickly stop that behaviour. They may go to avoidance and they may do other things, but they will stop lunging out because there's no success in it. Just like we're saying with everything else, the success comes by doing it and getting a result. If the result's poor, it shapes the behaviour the other way. But once we do that, you must then look to desensitise the dog to whatever the object is that's creating stress to it. That you're not fixing the behaviour. Once again, no change is permanent, but you're not even really tackling the real cause of the behaviour unless you desensitise the dog to it. Now, when we're talking about desensitisation, what we're talking about again is getting the object at a distance where the dog is aware of it, but not freaking out about it. It's not really stressed. It might be just sort of looking like, ooh, what's going on here? Oh, I see it. Oh, I'm not too sure. That's about the distance I want the dog at. And then basically I'll just let it settle there. I'll just let it relax and settle at that distance. And when I see the body language calm, I will then positively reinforce the dog for doing that. That could be a treat, it can be a pat. Whatever the dog sees value in, I will give it. Okay, my go-to is bacon and cheese. Okay, that I get that dog and I'm just pumping it full of bacon and that the object. And every time it takes even the slightest step towards it, and it might just literally be just leans in. Good dog, well done, that's what I'm looking for, and I reinforce that confident motion. What I'm trying to do is get the dog to build its confidence to move towards the object, that it feels good about it. And I want to create an association between that object and the positive thing that it's got. Now that it could be food, it can be pats, it can be a ball, it can be a whole series of different things depending on what the dog sees value in. But I'm trying to link in the brain, that object brings this positivity. So if you didn't like people and you don't like people coming to your house, but every person that walks in the door gives you $50. Pretty soon you're opening the door to anybody walking past the house. That's what we're trying to do with the dog. We're trying to desensitise it to make it feel good about the object that it is now stressed about. But if you don't actually change the way it perceives the threat, you won't really rectify the problem. Because even with teaching the dog a bad result by doing it, sooner or later the dog breaches too close to that object, and it doesn't matter. Like, you can say to me, stand here, and I'll go, rightio. And you might bring a couple of objects in that make me a little bit uncomfortable, and I'll go, okay. And you especially go, you move away from here, I'm going to fine you $10,000. But a grizzly bear walks in the door, bye-bye, I'm gone. I'm not sticking around to get mauled by a bear, no matter what the threat is. So at some point, you're going to get the dog to react again. But when you actually shift it back the other way and make the dog feel good about the object, you remove the fact of that it feels under threat by that. Now, this can be very, very slow. Okay, it'd be lovely to be able to go, oh yeah, look, you know, the dog's scared of a child, let's say, 5 goes at this and it's done. It's not. The way to think of it again is like the phobia of spiders. If I was to get my wife past that phobia of spiders, no good me going, look, here's 10 spiders, look at them, they're nothing to worry about. It would be slowly that, probably where the cameraman is, I would have to stand here with a spider, go, nothing bad happened, it's okay. And then just move it off, and we just do that again in short bursts, so that we just get a bit closer and a bit closer and a bit closer, and it could take years to slowly desensitise the fact that she perceives she's under threat by that. And a phobia, quite often when we're talking about defensive aggression, is the best analogy that I can make. If you're scared of heights, it's not a slow progression. You're going to walk up a ladder a couple of steps and then a couple more and slow on and build it up and up and up and up from that. Now, the other thing that people do a lot of the time is they will go, the dog's scared of, I don't know, whatever it is, a rock for example. There's no point dragging the dog to the rock and going, look, don't be scared of it. That is a technique called flooding, and you can do it, but you better be prepared to stay the course, because if you don't, the dog will get worse. And most of the time that's what occurs with it. If you just go, you will get to this object, because it's no different to, once again, you're scared of heights. It doesn't help by hanging out of an aeroplane. Okay, it makes it worse. It creates hypersensitivity to it. By getting a huge burst of that stimuli and being so close and just reacting, it actually creates hypersensitivity to it. And it'll probably take a year to undo what's been done in one session of just basically going, you will get used to this. Like I said, you can do flooding, and flooding works at different times, but you have to really stay the course. As a general rule, you're much better off, for me, staying where you are slowly desensitising the dog, and just be prepared that it's going to take weeks, months or years. But if you just slowly progress, you'll do well. That's why, like I said, when I get defence, I will teach the dog there's no success in it. I will create aversion to it, that the dog goes, I don't want to show that behaviour because it's a bad result for me, because then I can put it in more situations without it firing up. So that's all I'm doing at the start, is saying this is a bad result for you. But now, nothing bad happened. There's nothing to worry about by that object, and we just slowly desensitise the dog to it, and it can take a long period of time to get that right if the dog really feels it's under threat. Some things are very small. They get past in a couple of weeks. When you're doing it, also, do it in short bursts. The brain can only stay stressed for a very short period of time. It's no different to us. if you're really under the pump all the time and you're feeling stressed, sooner or later you have a breakdown. The dog's very much the same. It can't stay stressed for 3 hours at a time. You want to do it in 3 and 4 minute bursts. When I film myself working a dog and training a dog in obedience, what I've found is the peak learning curve for a full adult dog is only about 4 minutes. Then they start to tire, they throw different behaviours at you that are not quite the same. They're just not showing the pattern of behaviour that I want. So when I'm working with a dog, like if I take it to the kennels, I don't do an hour of work with that dog. I do 15 minutes in 3 5-minute bursts with breaks of play and relaxation in between, getting the brain back to being fresh. Might go back into the kennel for a while and then I bring it out and I do it again. It's only that we do it correctly and we make sure it works for us so that we get success. But it's very important that the dogs stay in that frame of mind where it's learning and fresh, not that it's been stressed for an hour, because at that point the dog is going to learn nearly zero.